Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying my nightly walks around the yard and garden. Have you noticed how things are coming or slow to be coming?
I will tell you, the hostas are just shooting up out of nowhere.
You read my mind.
And especially the ones that get a little bit more sun, they are just jumping up. The ones that are in more of a shaded area, they're coming along a little bit slower. But I think last week we talked about bleeding hearts have just really shot up too. Rhubarb's well established almost already. Not ready to pick, but it's clear that what that is. And yeah, it's fun.
Now, our hosta on the north side are just thinking about poking through the soil because it seems like, where snow was, soil was slower to warm up. Ours are just barely thinking about coming out. And I've been getting questions about perennials, some things being slower. Do we give them time? And yes, definitely. Until these last few warmer days, the soil's been pretty chilly. And, for example, my winter hardy hibiscus, that's still way down there somewhere. That isn't poking up. And I'm especially excited today because as our guest, we've got my friend and coworker, NDSU Extension horticulturist Esther McGinnis. So it's going to be fun because when we look on Facebook or see people share things, there's a lot of myths in gardening. So it's going to be fascinating to visit about some of these myths, separating some of the fact from the fiction on that. But this is such a fascinating time of year of how our yards and gardens change from May 1st to May 31st. So it's a wonderful time. And now today, as we're recording this, the wind is just brutal.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll bring a little bit of rain.
That'll be nice. Because while we're thinking and looking and seeing what's happening in our gardens, I noticed already that the Red River Valley Garden Tour has been announced and that those dates are set.
Tickets are on sale.
Yeah, it's July 15th and 16th this year.
It is, and that is an NDSU Cass County Extension Master Gardener-led project, and this is the third year?
I think
third or is it the fourth? Time goes by. It's been very, very successful. The proceeds, the income from those tours go to a worthwhile nonprofit. This year it's Hope Blooms, and we visited with her from Hope Blooms on that. And so, yes, tickets are on sale now. So just check out Red River Valley Garden Tours. And July 15th, 16th, they'll be here before we know it.
Are you feeling more relaxed this year that you're not on the tour, that you can actually go around and see the other yards?
Yes, because the pressure is on when you're on the tour, but it's a good pressure because it allowed Mary and I to get some things done that we maybe would not have otherwise done. When you're going to have 800 people coming to see what you've been up to, the pressure was on, but it's good pressure and absolutely delightful people coming on through. So I'm looking forward to this year.
Well, speaking of delightful people, like you said, we've got Esther McGinnis here. But before we get to her, you've got a letter from a listener.
Yes. And I'm just going to use the abbreviation MW because that's what they used to write in. And I love this question. Okay, here it is. I'm planting grass in a few dead spots in my yard. Last year, I either bought soil or dirt. I can't remember, but it didn't appear to have any black dirt in it. It was mostly partially decomposed sticks and other debris. Should I be looking for bags of dirt or soil? And where should I be looking? Thank you. I love this question because it is such a grassroots, okay, what's dirt? What's soil? Okay, soil is probably the more preferred term for dirt, but when we say I'm going to go out and work in the dirt, rarely we don't usually say I'm going out to work in the soil, but soil, dirt, are the same thing. It's that big body of that's that big entity that's out in the farm fields, in our gardens, under our lawns. That is soil. And so soil is the preferred. But now I think MW is referring to, when she needs to fill in some low spots to reseed some grass, she might have gotten potting mix. And so when a person's going to the garden center, the chain stores, and you're looking at these big bags, If it's called potting mix, those are meant to be for pots, planters, containers. They're oftentimes have composted, maybe barks, twigs. That might be what she had. Peat moss, something such as that. They also sell bags of garden soil or topsoil. And so what MW needs is that, probably instead of a potting mix, which would be lighter, more well-drained, and not really as recommended for in-ground use. So, but I love the way that the question brings up, dirt, soil, potting mix. And so occasionally they'll throw us a little curve and you'll see a bag that's called potting soil. And so that causes confusion. But check for two different products. For containers, go for a potting mix. For in-ground use, go for a garden soil or topsoil. And Esther, I'm sure you've heard that before too. Do you have any comments that we could add to help them?
Well, I do have something that my former soils teacher used to say, and he liked to actually differentiate between soil and dirt because he was very much a professional, very much wanted to advocate for the science of soil.
Exactly, and it is a science.
It is very much a science. So he used to tell me that dirt is what you find in the house.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I love it. And so I hope MW that kind of helps clarify what it is. But I love that. That is such a wonderful basic type question as to what are we actually looking for in some of these uses.
And so if people have questions, any other question for you about dirt, soil, or plants, anything like that, what's the best way to reach you?
Send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, at ndsu.edu. And now, welcome Esther McGinnis. Now, in addition to being the NDSU Extension horticulturist and associate professor, you're also the director of the NDSU Extension Master Gardener program. So welcome to our program.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah. We're happy to have you.
Yes. Now, I've got to ask, where did you first get interested in gardening? And kind of tell us a little bit about where you were raised and how you happened to get into this field.
All right, so it's kind of a funny story. I have a non-traditional path to horticulture. My undergraduate was from Concordia College here in the Valley, and I majored in philosophy of all things.
Oh. Philosophy is a gateway to everything, though.
It is. It's wonderful training for analysis and for writing, and I knew I was going to law school. So as you mentioned, I don't really have a straight path to horticulture. I went off to the Twin Cities, to the University of Minnesota, went to law school, and then I practiced law for 10 years in downtown St. Paul. But all the while I was waiting for court appearances, I would be reading gardening catalogs because we had constructed our first house and I had this blank slate, to fill in. There wasn't a tree, shrub, flower anywhere on the property. And then all of a sudden I started gardening and I was very fortunate because I learned how to garden from my parents. I learned how to vegetable garden from my father and do some ornamental gardening from my mother. But then this led to a midlife crisis where I, at the tender age of my early 30s, and went back to school to study horticulture.
So what was it like when you actually made the decision, okay, I'm going to leave the law career behind and I'm going to go study horticulture? Was there just kind of an aha moment, or how did you decide? How did you make that decision?
Well, life can be sometimes a little on the funny side, because at that point in time, I was burnt out from law and I knew I needed to change professions. But also, my husband and I didn't think we could have children. So I thought, well, you know what? I don't have to put a kid through college. I can be selfish, go back to school and get my master's and PhD. But here's the funny part. About a month into my master's degree, I became pregnant. So yes, I am now putting a kid through college, but life is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now old Professor Neil Holland, who we both knew, he always said, plants are much more reasonable than most people. So I hope you probably find that plants litigate one another much less often than people.
Very true.
Than people are involved in laws. So that's awesome. Well, we're happy that you found this. And one of the programs that you present that I've enjoyed the most is talking about the myths of things, the gardening type myths. And so it's going to be interesting to get into some of those.
I was just wondering, like going back, the law. I'm fascinated. I hadn't heard the story that you were a lawyer. I was trying to think, like, are there any things that line up? Are there any parallels? The only thing I can think of between horticulture and law is, well, they're both very in-depth studies. Probably Latin. Did your use of Latin help you at all? Not really the same words there, but as science, but.
Oh, absolutely, because I did need to know a little bit of Latin. A lot of the legal terms are in Latin. And then when I was at the University of Minnesota, I had to teach the introductory herbaceous plant identification course, where I had to have my students learn the Latin names or the scientific names of plants.
Oh,
the other thing that I was thinking that excuse me, where the law study must help in horticulture is the investigation, the process of finding, because sometimes we deal a lot with, okay, what's wrong with this, or how do we track this down, detective work. And so I would think that a background in the legal procedure and the preciseness of that, that I would think that would help in horticulture too.
Oh, it helped tremendously. It's a wonderful life skill to have, to be able to conduct research and, analyze different sources of information and try to see, what are some of the better resources and such. And that's kind of what I've applied here today with respect to these gardening myths.
That's awesome. Now, I'm not sure as undergraduates, we need to advise everyone to go get their law degree before horticulture, but I can see where that would be very beneficial. On that, the preciseness needed in law, that the same preciseness that would be beneficial in tracking down our horticulture type topics.
And then for my PhD, I did use my legal background because I studied both the legal and the scientific ramifications of genetically engineered organisms.
Oh, really?
Yes.
As in the GMO type things that we hear a lot of?
Yes.
Oh, fascinating.
Yes.
Wow.
So you really do have to know, you have to be able to cite various sources and going back and really doing research, and those things are all kind of working together then there, aren't they?
Oh, 100%.
And of course, that's the importance of much of the extension-based information that we give is that it's based on science and things that we can back up. And I'm sure on all the legal things, you need to be able to back up what you say. And so I can see where that would be very beneficial in extension and the information that we provide.
Oh, it is.
Being able to cite resources and to cite where you came up with the information.
Oh, very much so. And then in writing scientific papers, I swear you have to have a citation for almost every sentence in the literature review. Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do with the Extension Service now?
Well, I am the extension horticulturist, but also run the Master Gardener program, which is just near and dear to my heart because we're all about being a blessing to our communities.
No, we were just talking about how the garden tour is only a couple of years old. How long has the Master Gardener program been running? Do you know?
I do. Here in North Dakota, it started in 1980, and I know Don was in the first class.
Oh, okay.
So he's one of our very first Master Gardeners. And then, according to my records, it disbanded in 1988. We had a massive drought, and I'm sure there was a bit of a farm crisis. And then I think it was reinstituted in 1996.
Okay, so there was a period there where there was kind of a substantial period there where it wasn't in operation.
That's correct.
Yeah, a little bit just kind of at rest, I guess you might say, waiting for Esther to come along and reactivate. So in all, it's probably been in North Dakota 46 years or so?
About that, yes.
Yeah, since 1980.
And then nationwide, it's been over 50 years.
What's involved in becoming a Master Gardener? Because it's a name that's kind of, I shouldn't say thrown about, but it's used. We know about it, but I'm not sure I really know what all's involved in what makes a Master Gardener. What are the credentials that you have to have?
Well, I have to admit, we don't like the term anymore because do you ever totally master anything in life?
True.
Yeah, because I don't consider myself a master gardener. And yeah, because we all continue to learn. So yeah, I can appreciate that you don't really care for that term.
Is there a preferred term now?
There isn't a preferred term because this is what has been used for 50-some years, but it came from German Gartenmeister.
Sure.
So the founder had spent some time studying in Germany during the 1970s or maybe early 1960s, and he was aware they like to bestow titles on people in the trade. So that's why he came up with the term of master gardener. But I can explain what it's about.
Yeah.
And it's really both education and volunteer service. So all of our master gardeners apply to become interns in our program. They take a 40-hour course that covers a wide range of topics, all different plant materials, fruits, vegetables, trees, ornamentals, lawns, and they get a little taste of entomology, soils, plant pathology, pest management, etc. So they take this course, which is about 40 hours long, and it can be taken in person, online, or through recordings. After they pass the class, they can then become a master gardener if they volunteer for a certain number of hours, and they do it under the auspices of Extension. And our whole goal here is to be a blessing to their communities. They do volunteer projects, probably in about close to 40 counties in this state.
And here in Cass County, we have approximately 135 or so master gardeners and a group of interns, and then a number of those who have moved into the emeritus status of those. So we've got a good body. And in Cass County here, as an example, some of their signature programs, one is the Red River Valley Garden Tours. That Master Gardener Committee and their volunteers, they do it. They're responsible for that. The success of it is due to them. Also, Veggies for the Pantry is a Cass County Master Gardener. Home gardeners oftentimes have more vegetables than they know what to do with or give away. So Veggies for the Pantry, starting about the end of August, they staff about eight locations around the metro, and then on Monday evenings, home gardeners can drop off all their excess cucumbers and tomatoes and everything, and then it is taken by the master gardeners to food pantries. And last year was approximately 20,000 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables that went to those in need. And so a tremendous program. A sensory garden at the Red River Valley Zoo. So these are real impactful programs that the master gardeners accomplish, and that's just in Cass County. And you said in about 40 counties throughout North Dakota.
That's correct. And they do a variety of things. They work with children. We have several that are in our speakers bureau and give presentations to garden clubs and during garden events. Pollinators are a big deal in the Master Gardener program. We've got over 30 certified Master Gardener teaching gardens. So they give tours and give talks in these gardens to teach adults and children on the value of pollinators and their importance in the ecosystem and in our food supply.
And our Yard and Garden Palooza all-day event that was April 18th, 40 master gardeners do all the work, everything from helping with the lunch to breakout session monitors, introducing speakers, and etc. And so, as we like to say, the master gardeners are an extension of extension. We can't do it all ourselves, but we've got this big mass of wonderful volunteers that greatly increase the amount of work that we can get done within the states.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is a really great service for the community.
Oh, it is.
How many people are working towards their master, towards that final title, for lack of a better term?
Well, intern-wise, we probably have about 50 interns that are still working towards becoming certified master gardeners, and the remainder would be certified master gardener volunteers, but we also have master gardener diagnosticians. And I'm going to be offering that course to our existing master gardeners this spring. And the focus is going to be on solving plant problems, diseases, insects, pests, and abiotic problems.
As an example of that, recently, Esther, you and I got an email from someone who kind of inherited a property from a gardener that was very good at it several years ago, but things had grown up, and he needs assistance in identifying and knowing what to do. So then I'm going to forward this on to our Master Gardener diagnostician team to help identify what he's got so we can kind of get a handle on what needs to be done to move forward.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's great. Let's take a quick little break. When we come back, let's talk about some of these myths that you've been working on.
Local news affects your life. It gives you the confidence and clarity to make better decisions every day. You can support that with a digital subscription. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to take advantage of our introductory offer, just $6 for 6 months.
All right, we're back this week. We've got a guest in the studio, Esther McGinnis, one of Don's coworkers with the Extension Service. And Esther, I was really excited that you were coming in this week because as it's finally kind of time to get out in the yard, I've been going to garden centers a lot lately, and I found this on at a garden center. This was a posted trivia question. It's trivia of the week. What flower is often used in companion planting to repel pests due to their strong scent? And the options are lavender, petunias, marigolds, or chrysanthemums. And I think that we would probably, from talking about this with Dawn, I think maybe you'd agree, maybe none of these is really the right answer. If there is an E, none of the above, maybe that's the best.
Now, if we're talking about pests as in rabbits, it can be a little on the dicey side. I have to admit, I tried marigolds once, and I planted a ring of marigolds around the plants I wanted to protect. And lo and behold, the rabbits came around and they bit off all the flowers of my marigolds.
And my experience has been the exact same, because you do see that sometimes recommended on social media or other posts of using marigolds as a repellent to keep the rabbits out. But I found that the rabbits enjoy my marigolds. But
you work with a lot of myths, and like you said, you have a kind of a presentation that you've done based on gardening myths. So let's talk about some of those.
So absolutely. Do you want to start off with peppers? I mean, this is a hot one.
Yeah.
So with our peppers, this is a myth that's perpetuated by chefs and by garden influencers. I mean, so you see lots of myths online. And in this one, they're saying that female peppers are sweeter than male peppers, and that you can differentiate them by looking at the number of lobes or on bumps on the bottom of the pepper. So for our listeners, you would turn the pepper over and look at the number of bumps on the bottom.
And I've seen that photo posted on Facebook where you have these two peppers. You can see the base of them, and the one pepper has 4 lobes, the other has the 3 lobes. And so I've seen that posted on
And so these
Facebook.
are bell peppers that we're talking about. These aren't like jalapenos or hot peppers necessarily, right?
Correct. These are bell peppers.
And so what have you found in that? What's the truth level there? Is there any truth to that you can tell the sweetness value?
No, there is no truth whatsoever. And we're finding that our garden influencers don't know the difference don't know their birds and the bees about this. And I promise I'll keep the conversation G-rated here.
Okay. Yep.
But we do need to kind of discuss this a little bit. So as we look at a pepper flower, it is what we call a perfect flower. It has the male component, which is the stamens, and they produce pollen. The pollen would be the male gametes. And we've got the pistil in the center of the flower that is the female portion, and at the bottom of the pistil is the ovary. So we have to imagine that pollen is transferred then from the stamen onto the pistil. The pollen grain germinates, grows down the pistil, and it fertilizes the ovules in the ovary. And it's really the ovary that swells and becomes the bell pepper. So all peppers are actually ovaries that were fertilized. So we don't talk about them as being male or female.
There's no gender.
They're essentially ovaries that are a container for the seeds, and the seeds are the product of the union between male and female. So you can't tell the difference by looking at the bottom of the pepper. It's really a matter of genetics or environmental influences as to whether you have 3, 4, or 5 bumps.
And of course, as I remember from botany, that the definition of a fruit, which peppers and tomatoes are fruits, is a ripened ovary. So all of those peppers are a ripened ovary. And so, yeah, we can't distinguish that this one's a boy pepper and that one's a girl pepper. So, yeah, it's kind of fascinating, these myths. I got a kick out of that when you go to the grocery store, look for the lobes on those. I get a kick out of that somehow the one would be sweeter.
I'd never heard that, but that's a good one now to know that's not to listen to.
That cycles around on Facebook fairly often.
It does, but we can tell our listeners what to look for if they want a sweeter pepper.
Yeah.
And I think people get confused. You can plant seeds for, red peppers, orange, yellow peppers, etc., but all of them start off as a green bell pepper. And then they transition. So, a green bell pepper, if you keep it on the plant and let it ripen, it will transition to red. And that red bell pepper, which is more ripe, will be sweeter. So the red is always going to be sweeter than the green. Same is true for orange and yellow peppers.
True. Great. Here's another one. We've talked about this from time to time, but a Good Friday potato planting tradition that you should start planting potatoes on Good Friday. Any scientific actuality to that?
None whatsoever. But it makes for an interesting story. And there are a couple traditions with this. The first is that potatoes were brought to Europe from Central and South America, where they originate from. There was a lot of suspicion about them because potatoes are in the nightshade family. And we know nightshade is poisonous. So in order to redeem the potato, the tradition goes that you had to plant it on Good Friday and that you had to sprinkle it generously with holy water.
So somehow it'd become not poison anymore if you did the right planting technique.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. But there's also another explanation for that. Now imagine you're a peasant in Ireland. You don't get many days off.
Right.
So most likely the peasants got Good Friday off, and that's when they put in their vegetable garden because they had the time.
And one thing that makes it so tricky on Good Friday is because the way that Easter is set and Good Friday is it moves.
Yeah.
Isn't it can almost be a space of nearly a month almost?
I think it's related to a lunar calendar set up based on
because Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox.
Right.
So I think it can vary, a month or so, and that can make a big difference in potato planting.
Yes.
The only thing that I follow on potato planting is I know that some of the stores are going to have their seed potatoes out before Good Friday in case somebody wants to try that, brush away the snow and plant your potatoes. But I like to go and get my seed potatoes so they aren't at room temperature in the farm supply store getting all long and sprouty. And so I do set Good Friday as the time I'll buy my seed potatoes and put them in a cool storage.
Acquiring, yes. Planting, no.
You got it, John.
Here's another one that's kind of gone around, and we've talked about it a little bit, but using Tums or Rolaids or eggshells to fight and combat blossom end rot on tomatoes.
Oh, that's an oldie but goodie. I have to admit, I have a family member that still persists in doing this.
Tums or Rolaids? Do they have a preference?
I don't know. I don't know which one he prefers, but he does plant with that. And his line of thought is that blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. So blossom end rot, most people have probably seen it in their tomatoes. That's where the bottom of the tomato starts to turn brown and it rots. And it is caused by a calcium deficiency, but people don't realize that we have a ton of calcium in our soils in this region. It's really more of a water transport problem. We want there to be enough rain and moisture in the soil that it dissolves the calcium and washes the calcium towards the roots. The roots can absorb that water solution and take it up in the vascular system and then supply it to the fruit. So we generally see blossom end rot during times of drought, and no amount of Tums is going to cure that.
Yeah, so even though Tums has calcium in it or Rolaids, it's not gonna improve. What do you say to someone who's, because I get this comment occasionally. What do you say to someone that says, "Well, I put Tums in my tomato plants always when I'm planting, and I never have blossom end rot"? What do you say to that? What's your response?
Well, I don't like to hurt people's feelings. So, if they're having good results, I don't try and talk them out of it. But internally, I'm thinking that they're doing everything else right. They're most likely keeping their potatoes in such a state that there's an even soil moisture, so they're irrigating. Most likely, they're not over-fertilizing. They may even put down some mulch. So they're probably doing everything else.
So they're probably doing
right.
the same thing. So even if they leave out the Tums, they're probably going to not have blossom end rot because, like you say, they're doing everything else right.
That's correct.
They're just being a
Again,
good gardener.
the legal background that A doesn't necessarily mean B, and the two don't
Correlation and
necessarily.
causation.
Exactly.
Here's another one: Epsom salts to fight blossom end rot.
Oh, that myth will not go away.
Yes.
Which one do you think you do? Do you both get calls on these?
Blossom end rot is one of my top 3 questions. That, rabbit control, and maples sclerosis.
We do see that across the state, and I get most of my questions from extension agents, so it is kind of the number one question during the summer. That with herbicide damage.
Yeah.
So what is, Epsom salt, if you add that for blossom end rot, because I do see lots of people saying, add Epsom salt. So what's that all about?
I don't even know. Is there calcium in Epsom salt, or why would you want that?
John, that's exactly the point. There is no calcium in Epsom salts. That's magnesium sulfate. And if you studied chemistry, you would know that the ionic charge for magnesium and calcium ions are the same. So in fact, if there's too much magnesium in the soil, the two can interfere with one another and the plant may not be able to take up as much calcium. So in fact, Epsom salts can make blossom end rot worse.
Oh.
So Epsom salt, I used to use it to soak my sore, tired feet at the end of a hard day in the horticulture plots. So I'll save it for that.
There you go.
Let's kind of move, because one of the other things that we see a lot of is the idea of home remedies, that you can use certain things, that these are, people call them hacks or different things like that. What are some of the ones that you've heard a lot of?
Do-it-yourself insecticidal soap.
Okay,
yes, that one goes around a lot.
That sounds like something that could be really beneficial.
Well,
it could be if it were true.
It depends. There's just so many variables, I should say. Well, with do-it-yourself insecticidal soap, the practice is where you would mix varying concentrations of dish soap in a gallon of water. Now, in theory, insecticidal soap works because it dissolves the waxy coating that is on soft-bodied insects. So think like aphids, some mealybugs, whiteflies, and it can be very effective at that. But here's the problem. We have leaves that have a waxy coating. So all leaves have this waxy cuticle. So we have to make sure that the solution we're spraying on the plant doesn't wash off that waxy coating and, desiccate that leaf. So when we think about making homemade insecticidal soap, most people are reaching for dish soap. And they don't realize that dish soap is not a true soap. It's a synthetic detergent, and it has all sorts of ingredients in it, cleaning agents, surfactants, solvents, salt, perfumes, you name it, maybe even an antibacterial agent in it. So you have no idea what you're mixing. And then you've got dish soaps that come in many different formulations. So most likely any formulation you make is going to be too harsh. We like to tell people that it's better to buy a commercial insecticidal soap rather than doing it yourself, because that's formulated to be gentler on the plant.
Okay. Another one, soaking chewing tobacco to create an insecticide.
I've not heard that one, but I can kind of see where that's coming from.
Yes. And the theory behind that is you would soak the chewing tobacco in water to extract the nicotine. And we know nicotine's a stimulant. Anybody that has smoked certainly has proved that. But nicotine can kill insects because it will overstimulate the nervous system of the insect. But there are a lot of problems with, making your own insecticide, your own chewing tobacco solution. The first is you don't know how much nicotine you're extracting because you're just soaking chewing tobacco in water, so you don't know the concentration. Also, people don't realize that nicotine can be harmful for individuals, not just being inhaled through cigarette smoke, but it can be harmful being absorbed through your skin. So you don't want to get any of the solution on your skin. But then we want to also think about plant health. So the very first plant virus that was discovered was tobacco mosaic virus. And chewing tobacco and cigarettes,
A good point.
can retain that.
Yeah, because when I was a student working with the transplanting tomatoes, Professor Holland always made sure that we washed our hands, even those of us that didn't smoke, because he said, well, because in case anybody did smoke, transplanted tomatoes, that virus could go from the cigarette tobacco onto the young tomato plants.
And that's very true. And those virus particles are will persist in the greenhouse or in the environment for quite a long time. So we don't want to be playing around with that.
There's a book, Demon Copperhead, written by Barbara Kingsolver a couple of years ago. And in part of that book, the main character is working on a tobacco farm, and they're talking about cutting down the leaves, and he gets very sick. And that's exactly it, because he's touching the raw tobacco leaves. And because they can be really toxic, really. So I had not heard that until I read that book just recently. And so, and also I can't imagine how much chewing tobacco you have to soak to make enough, to make enough of a solution there. That just seems, that's an odd one. Okay, how about cinnamon powder, something that's not as toxic? Maybe?
I see this advocated a lot on some of the social media gardening groups.
Cinnamon powder used as an antifungal?
When people have some disease problems, I see people saying, well, use cinnamon.
Absolutely.
And so what's that all about? I'm curious.
It would smell good.
Yes.
And like a lot of myths, there is a kernel of truth in it. They have shown that a chemical from one of the cinnamon species can be beneficial. It's called cinnamaldehyde, and it can have some antimicrobial properties to it. But really, the science of that is in its early stages. So when you try and find research on it, the research isn't very well done. And here's the rub. They don't necessarily list which species of cinnamon plant they're working with. There are multiple species of cinnamon, and you have no idea what you're buying when you go to the grocery store or order from a spice store online, what you're getting, unless you're very careful. So the most commonly used cinnamon in Europe and Mexico is what we call true cinnamon. It's Ceylon cinnamon, and that came to us from Sri Lanka. So that's one species, and then we have at least 3 species that are really fake cinnamons. They're also called cassia cinnamons. One of them we see in Chinese 5-spice powder. Now, I don't see people advocating the use of that, but we look at what we find in the grocery store, and there are commonly 2 other fake cinnamons that we see. One is Vietnamese or Saigon cinnamon. And I used to love that one because it was very sweet but spicy. So I really like a strong cinnamon flavor to it. And then the other cinnamon we see in the grocery store is like an Indonesian or Kerinche cinnamon. So what are they using in the scientific studies? We don't know. And furthermore, in what capacity are they extracting this? In what concentrations? So maybe sometime there could be, we could find scientific studies, but it's still in its infancy.
Yeah, and so what a person might just grab off the spice shelf at the grocery store or the discount store may not be even the one that they're studying that has some benefit to it.
That's very true.
Yeah, fascinating. Because I noticed too when people are having little damping off in their seedling trays, I see people suggest, well, sprinkle cinnamon, but I'm not about to sprinkle something untested onto my precious little seedlings. So, but interesting. Yeah, good discussion.
That's right. And then cinnamon can be really expensive too.
Right.
So
the good stuff.
You've got value on both sides.
Yeah,
so don't waste
the good
it.
stuff. Yeah, the good stuff is expensive.
Here's another one that we've heard a lot of, but using eggshells or beer for slug management.
Oh, goodness, Don, how many emails do you get on this?
Yes, on both the eggshells and the beer for slugs.
Yes, there are lots of different recommendations online. The first one being eggshells. And one of my good friends, Dr. Jeff Gilman, did the research on this. So he was trying to deter slugs. And for those that aren't familiar with slugs, they're like snails without the shells, and they'll devour our precious hostas. They really like these moist environments. But my friend Jeff Gilman studied this, and he went to his own garden, took some slugs, put them on a paper plate, and surrounded them by crushed eggshells, and then waited and waited and waited. And the slugs had no problem crossing those eggshells. That was not an effective barrier at all.
Because in theory, they'd be the sharp sides would deter them. So that's fascinating.
Well, there is something, I think there are some kind of insecticides, right, that are used with something that will, they're just such fine particles, maybe not of eggshells, but something that it really does, it destroys the bug in that case.
Yes.
So I suppose maybe there's similarities in thinking, but
a diatomaceous earth would be
that's what it is. Yes,
would be more effective than the eggshells. And diatomaceous earth is made up of marine diatoms, and it's very jagged, kind of like cut glass. So that can be used as a first-line defense against slugs. We sprinkle the powder around the plants to form a barrier around them, and the slugs don't like to cross that barrier. But there's a problem here, and that is diatomaceous earth becomes less effective when it's wet.
Oh, sure.
So if we've got a rainy season, it's not going to be very effective. And then we also have to be careful not to breathe it in, because it's like breathing in cut glass. So I tell people to be careful, but they can use diatomaceous earth for that.
Well, it's valuable to know that the eggshells alone will not, because I do see that in discussions on slugs, I see people saying, well, use eggshells. That works. So that's wonderful to know. What about the beer trays?
Well, I was just, before we get to that, just leaving eggshells in your garden isn't necessarily bad, though, right? It's not going to hurt your garden.
It's not going to hurt your garden.
Because they will break down. They'll decompose and it'll become, yeah. But so what about beer? Because beer's a very common one. I've heard
the trays of beer sunk down in. Yep.
There is some truth to it.
Okay.
And the practice here is where you would take a bowl, and the bowl has to have steep sides. You dig a hole in the soil in the area where you're more likely to see the slugs. You sink the bowl so that the rim is even with the soil line. You fill it with beer, but you leave maybe about an inch of head space. And the theory is that, okay, let's get those slugs to be attracted to it. And then with that inch of headspace, they're going to lean over and lean a little closer and lean closer and then drown in the beer. They can, in fact, be attracted to beer. They have proven that scientifically there are some species of slugs that are attracted to it. But they're not attracted to the beer. They're attracted to the yeast that's in the beer.
Oh, interesting.
So I suppose that yeast, certainly when if you have something fermenting in the house, if you're working on a sourdough starter or something like that, it's a powerful smell.
It is. It is. And I think we're going to be seeing maybe some remedies, in the future where we are using something along those lines to attract the slugs. So, science is continually evolving, but I'm going to tell you all, don't waste your good beer. Keep your micro beer for yourself.
Keep your good beer, keep your good cinnamon.
Yes.
I was going to ask if there was a special brand that they prefer.
Okay, I've got one. This is one I've used. And again, I'm not sure if there's a scientific rationale for it, but instead of using something like a marigolds to keep, I used crushed red pepper flakes. Just the smell to me, I think that would be
for rabbit deterrent.
For rabbit deterrent, I've had some success with that. And if you go to a dollar store and you buy the big jug for $1, then it's maybe a little bit more cost effective. Is there any scientific rationale? Have you heard anything about that?
Behind the red pepper spray for rabbits. Yes.
Or red pepper flakes.
Oh, I don't know about the red pepper flakes. I know more about the liquid formulations where you grind up like habanero peppers and make a solution.
Probably want a respirator if you're going to be doing that.
Well, you have to wash your hands very carefully too. So with these pepper solutions, you would spray your plants and it would act as a deterrent. It can act a little bit as a deterrent against rabbits and some insects. The important thing is to, in fact, cover every inch of the plant, the tops and bottoms of the leaves, because it is a deterrent. It doesn't act as an insecticide. So it has to be sprayed all over. And then once they taste it, they may decide that's not for them. But the problem with the homemade pepper sauces is that it will wash off with a good rain.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is all very fun. Let's take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll talk about some more gardening myths.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back, and this week we've got Esther McGinnis, an extension agent from North Dakota State University, and we're talking about some different kind of garden myths that you've discussed before, and some of which maybe there's some truth to, some of which there's absolutely no truth to. Let's talk about soil additives. There's a lot of things that people talk about there, whether it's using coffee grounds or eggshells, things like that. Talk a little bit about those. What are good things? What are bad things? What are the myths and what are the facts?
All right, let's start off with coffee grounds. And that has been a long-term myth that has been used. I remember my grandmother used to faithfully dump out her spent coffee grounds around her mom's in her ornamental garden. And there are 3 claims that people make on the internet. The first is that it will contribute a source of nitrogen. The first is that it's a soil acidifier. And the third is that it will suppress weeds. And if all 3 were true, we would be so happy. Like all myths, there is a grain of truth here. It does contain nitrogen. It's like 1 to 2% nitrogen. Unfortunately, that nitrogen is not immediately available to the plants. And that's because it's in the wrong form. So when you dump it out in the garden, we have to wait until the soil microbes work on that, decompose the coffee grounds and change it or convert it to another form of nitrogen that can be taken up by the plants. But in that process, while the soil microbes are working, the soil microbes themselves need nitrogen. So they would be tying up available nitrogen while they're degrading the coffee grounds. Secondly, people like to think, oh, coffee grounds must be acidic. And Don, I know we would love to have more acidic soil.
Oh, we would. An antidote for our highly alkaline soils. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to simply add coffee grounds?
Yes. Coffee is acidic, and we do know that when we drink it. If we have too much, we can get nauseous. But unfortunately, the coffee grounds themselves are not as acidic as what we've consumed. The acid has been mostly left in the coffee we drink. The coffee grounds are going to have a soil pH, are going to have a pH of like 6.5 to 6.8. And if you think back to your high school chemistry, the pH scale, 1 to 14 with 7.0 being neutral, a pH of 6.5 to 6.8 is just barely acidic. It's not going to make a difference on your soil.
And so all of these things are easily backed up by science. Simply do a test on the acidity of the coffee grounds. And so these things are easily backed up by research and science.
How about as a weed suppressant? I hadn't heard that one.
And this is kind of interesting. It does work as a weed suppressant. They produce allelopathic compounds, and that's a big word, but we'll think about like walnut trees. Walnut trees are another example of a plant that produces allelopathic compounds. And what it does is it produces a compound that suppresses the growth of other plants or the germination of seeds. So it can be quite desirable to suppress weed growth. But if you're trying to start, your bean seeds in the garden or other things, it could in fact suppress the growth. They're probably more of a problem with our smaller seeds like carrots and beets. So we don't want to be doing that. And furthermore, it can be toxic to some of our desirable plants like our geraniums and our tomatoes. So we tell people,
yeah, I had never heard that about coffee grounds. Count the day lost, you don't learn something new. I had never heard that about coffee grounds, that they could inhibit the growth of some plants.
Yes.
And of course, you mentioned like black walnut. There are certain plants, vegetable plants, are really sensitive, such as tomatoes and potatoes. And so it's interesting that coffee grounds, I'm sure on some different specific other plants, could have that effect.
Yes, but you don't have to waste your coffee grounds. There's a better way. You can put them in your compost. And then in the compost, the microbes will work on it, degrade it into a form that will be useful to plants. But just make sure that your coffee grounds are no more than 20% by volume of your compost pile. So we're using a dilution method here. So if you're diluting it with all sorts of other plant material, then the allelopathic compounds won't be a concern.
That's a good idea because, it seems like it's kind of a good organic type material. So rather than wasting it, I like that idea of blending it in with the other compost.
Talking about compost, I brought this up earlier, using eggs in your garden. Is there eggs in compost, eggs in the garden? Is there any benefit to it? I shouldn't say eggs, eggshells.
Eggshells. It's a little complicated. I understand people wanting to make sure that they're not throwing as much in their garbage and such. So you can, in fact, try to compost them. And what we tell people is that, let them dry out for a few days on the counter. You can then, put them in the oven at 200 degrees, further dry them out so they're more brittle. And then you can break them down using, like a blender, an old blender or something along those lines, to grind it into a powder. And then you can put it into your compost. But we don't really know how long it's going to take to totally decompose. They're doing studies on it now, but they don't know because it's really resistant to breaking down. What we're seeing is that some people are taking this eggshell powder and they're using this as grit in their worm composting, and there it can be very beneficial. And then others, put it in the garden, which is fine, but it's not going to break down for quite a long time. But it really doesn't matter if you've ground it into a powder.
The other food one that I'd heard of is using banana peels.
Oh, banana peels.
Banana peels, especially like around roses, was it? Or
yeah.
Banana peels. Banana peels, any value there?
No.
Okay.
Bananas are very rich in potassium, and I think people are trying to extract potassium from the banana peels. But we should just be testing our soil. If we've got plenty of potassium in the soil, why bother with bananas?
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely have, various labs around the region where you can send a soil test. And really, that's the first thing you should be doing before you're engaging in any of these soil additives.
I like your analogy that you've used in the past about how adding something, a fertilizer or something to soil is, without a soil test, is kind of like adding salt to soup without first tasting it. And I think that's a perfect analogy of how, adding some of these things could be dangerous if we don't first have a soil test.
Absolutely. And that can also save us some money, without having to to go buy bananas or do all these things. Is maybe your soil is just fine the way it is.
So one of the things that I had always heard too, and as somebody who's got some pine trees in my yard and nearby, and we've got some arborvitae trees, that pine needles they can affect the soil. How much truth is there to that? Is that something that we should be concerned about?
I get that email a lot, usually in the form of under spruce trees. I'm having a hard time growing anything because, have the pine needles over the years made the soil acidic, or evergreen removed, and now is the soil too acidic to grow anything because of the pine needles? So I'm asked that a lot. So I'm curious what your reaction is, Esther.
One of my good friends who's now a professor at University of Wisconsin-River Falls, his name is David Zlezak. And he did the research on this when he was at University of Minnesota, because he was really interested in whether we could acidify the soil by using pine needles. Because once again,
that would be great. Yeah, get our soil more acid.
It would be wonderful. Maybe we could grow blueberries. But what was discovered is that the pine needles themselves can be quite acidic, but once they fall to the ground and are decomposed, they are no longer acidic. And we also have to keep in mind, our soil really resists, having a change of pH. It buffers that change. So unfortunately, pine needles will not change the soil pH, but I tell people it's a fabulous mulch.
Right?
Oh, definitely, because you can pay good money for bags of pine needle mulch. So, yeah, definitely, that does make a great mulch.
Yeah, and I suppose for some people who, why don't things grow under a spruce tree or pine tree? Well, there may be a lot of shade there.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the evergreens are shallow rooted.
Yeah.
And so the evergreens have mined the soil of nutrients and moisture, and it can be really tough. The evergreens are doing great. Trying to get something else to grow in that deficient, droughty soil can be a challenge.
So when you're doing this presentation, what do you want the takeaway to be? What do you want people to walk away thinking of or knowing?
I want people to be more cautious of the information that they read on the internet or through social media. I want them to take it with a grain of salt, and consider, is this a reputable source? Is there a profit motive? Is this particular website trying to sell you something? And, use your common sense. If it sounds like an easy solution, it most likely is false because, things tend to be a little bit more complicated than that.
Isn't that, I love that, because wouldn't gardening be easier if, here's the quick fix, just sprinkle a little cinnamon on it, or, throw a banana peel on your roses and they're going to bloom beautifully. So again, I like that there aren't always these quick fixes by doing one of these kind of myth type things. Cure blossom end rot, just add some Epsom salt when you plant it. So yeah, this kind of quick gunshot type approach, as you mentioned, oftentimes isn't the sound answer to these situations.
That's correct. And another point I would like to make, and I think this will be near and dear to your heart, Don, is the fact that if you are confused about this, you can certainly consult NDSU Extension. So we have offices in most counties in North Dakota, but most land-grant universities have extension offices that you can contact, regardless of whether you're in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, or elsewhere. So don't hesitate to contact Extension, because our mission is to provide objective advice. We're not beholden to corporations, and we want to provide science-based recommendations. So don't hesitate to reach out to your extension offices and get good advice.
And we want people to have success with their gardening and everything. And so, we'll provide the things that are the tried and true and that have science and research behind them so that they'll actually help us all in our gardening efforts.
Do you have any presentations coming up or any other events coming up?
Yes, we do have a major event coming up on July 21st. So I am in charge of the campus garden, which is on the corner of 12th Street and 12th Avenue and 18th Street. It's kind of the gateway to the NDSU campus. So that falls under my purview. And we have a major event once a year called Plants, Local Foods, and Outdoor Spaces. And with this particular event, we have speakers, we have tours of the garden, and Dawn is going to be joining us for that event. So we'll have various presentations that'll be occurring in an adjacent building, and then the main event will kick off at 4 p.m. And we're going to be joined by our new president. So NDSU's new president is Marshall Stewart, and I'm excited that he's going to be able to be there and will be able to greet area gardeners and to see how important horticulture is to North Dakota.
Well, and if people haven't been up to that garden, it is a wonderful garden. It's so much fun to walk through there. We were up there a couple times each summer, and we're looking sometimes at plant ideas, and then it's kind of like looking at a catalog. You're thinking like, oh, I wish I could get this in, and it's really, really great. And then there's the new, is it the daylilies, and kind of the adjoining, there's a daylily field, a big daylily field.
Yes, and that's why we scheduled this event for the third week in July, is that we have the largest collection of daylilies of any public institution in the country. So depending on the year, we kind of fluctuate between 1,800 and 2,000 cultivars. We're also the nation's first historic daylily collection. So we have daylilies dating back to the 1890s, including apricot, which is one of the very first cultivars. So everything through modern day daylilies. So it's like a history of daylily breeding.
And so for anyone in Fargo that has been on 12th Avenue North and you've come across this big overpass thing and you're coming down onto the west edge of campus, you just look to the north or to your left and those beautiful display gardens on the west edge of campus.
That's what this is.
Yep, that's what this is all about. And beautiful, because I know many people, and sometimes people ask me, can people tour that? Yes, absolutely. Of course, there's this big event, but also people can pull in there anytime. There's parking there, like you mentioned, John, and people can tour that beautiful display garden.
Absolutely. So anytime from sunrise to sundown, please visit. We are very much a public garden. We just joined the American Public Garden Association. So we would welcome you to come and visit. And I think we're going to be holding more events in the future.
It's a great place to have a little lunch.
Definitely.
Well, Esther, thank you very much for coming in. And if people have questions for you about any of the things that we talked about, your myths presentation or anything else, what's the best way to reach you?
They could certainly email me at esther.mcginnis@ndsu.edu.
All right. And Don, if people have questions for you about anything else related to gardening, what's the best way to reach you?
Similar emails. It uses our names. So mine is donald.kinsler@ndsu.edu.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming in this week, and we'll talk to you later.
Esther, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for listening.